Welcome to Agile to Agility podcast with Milan Bajic.
Major show alert!
The very first value we wrote is individuals and interactions.
Let's take this another level.
All right, so everyone, this is Gunther Verheyen. He's going to be giving our presentation this morning, and we're very happy to have him. Thank you so much, Gunther, and we're looking forward to hearing you speak.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stephen, for having me, and certainly also Emilia for the invitation to be part of this Agile to Agility initiative. Great. Okay, shall we get going? Everybody set?
Yes, but you're not sharing your screen anymore.
No. I was just
Okay.
trying to people not distract from what you were saying. Okay, cool. So as Stephen said, indeed, my name is Gunther Verheyen. By the way, I live in Belgium, in Antwerp, if anybody knows where that is. So over here now, where Stephen lives, it's around noon. Over here, it's 6 p.m. I don't know where you're all from, but anyhow, let's use a very neutral expression and let's say good day to everybody. That might be morning, might be noon, might be evening. I don't know, maybe even night in some places of the world. So this is the Scrum Masters Toolbox conference. So let's think about a couple of things about Scrum Masters. And I've got sort of two titles for my presentation, which is probably not done, but I started calling it the future state of Scrum, and I'll try to explain what I mean with that, the future state of Scrum, and how that sort of flows into what I call moving Scrum downfield, of moving your Scrum downfield, moving our Scrum downfield. So the idea is the following. So this is just a little bit about me. This is a little box I have in my home office. It's something I'm very attached to, quote, let's say, life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. That doesn't just apply to life as far as I'm concerned, but also to Scrum. Scrum is not something you just find out there. It's not just going to come to you, whatever. It's not just, you will not just find it by sort of like reading the Scrum guide or so. Scrum is about creating it yourself. So Scrum, how can you learn the game of Scrum? By playing, by going out there, by doing it. And the fact that a lot of people are discussing all these nitty-gritty details of the Scrum guide over and over and over and over and over, it seems to they allow that to impede them from actually starting to play the game and get to know the game. So that is for me very important. That's what I want to talk about today with all you guys, Scrum Masters. My personal belief in, let's say, the future state of Scrum is that we can also use Scrum not just as a great tool to build better products and create more excellent services, increase customer satisfaction, whatever, but it's also very important for me to use Scrum as a way to humanize the workplace. I truly believe that with Scrum, we can also humanize the workplace. And by the way, going to work in a more humane workplace is going to help us build better products. So creating better products, humanizing the workplace, they reinforce each other. That's my little belief about the future of Scrum. Now, this is a Scrum Masters Toolbox conference. So just imagine for a moment, it's not going to happen. Let's not make it happen anyhow. Imagine we would see Scrum Master as sort of a product. You would have to put it out there in the market. The problem with making a product might be that somebody's going to think that they can trademark it, and then we're going to have to give guarantees and so on and so on. So we're not going to go there, but just imagine Scrum Master being a product. And we would have to brand it. We have to put it into the market. Then for me, a really important baseline amongst all of the things that the Scrum Master can be said to be accountable for, a very important baseline for me is challenging the status quo. Scrum Master is that nasty, really annoying person within the organization, asking questions, challenging things, trying to change things, provoking us, almost irritating us. But that's quite important, challenging the status quo. And that's a little bit of a noise that I have with Scrum as a movement as a whole around the world. Now, it seems like we stopped challenging the status quo. We are debating, we're fighting bashers, and there's a lot of people ranting and so on. I think as Scrum Masters or people part of the Scrum movement, let's say, we're forgetting our roles. Scrum is here to stay. Be aware of that, and don't let yourself be tempted into all those annoying and distracting debates over nitty-gritty things of the Scrum. Yeah, what do you mean with that, and what if, and so on. So hypothetical scenarios and so on. No, Scrum is here to stay. Let's challenge the status quo a little bit more as Scrum Masters. And not just for our little Scrum, but together as a movement of Scrum around the world. Now, the title, The Future State of Scrum, so that's sort of the first title of my session. That comes from a little book I wrote quite a while ago, the first edition. It's called Scrum, a Pocket Guide. A subtitle is A Smart Travel Companion. I wrote the first version in 2013, updated in 2019, and a third update appeared in 2021. And the last chapter of the book is what I call The Future State of Scrum. What I believe are important challenges for us as Scrum people to address in the future and to help shape the future of Scrum. And in a way, the sad thing is, so I updated my book in 2021, and I believe those two challenges are still valid. And that is 8 years or 9 years after I wrote the first version, that those future challenges, those ways to shape the future of Scrum, it's still valid. So that starts feeling like a sort of a standstill situation, which is really, really not too great. So, and in my book, I described two main challenges. And the first one, what I call embracing the power of the possible product, which I describe as sort of two shifts or two challenges. And the first challenge is a quite important one. We are so overly focused on the rules of Scrum and how to play the game and what development should be and what practice should be in, and sort of the completeness versus the incompleteness of definition of Scrum, that I feel it's really important that we start using Scrum as a tool, that we should start focusing also on what are we achieving with Scrum, what are we doing with Scrum, what are we building with Scrum, rather than completely focusing, let's say, sort of on the engine of the machine or the engine of the car. Let's look at the direction that we're taking. Where are we going to? What are we trying to achieve? So sort of a step up for Scrum. And that then includes also that we need to shift from what I call the predicted product. So the product that has been completely defined, all features, all functionalities, all things that should be in there, whether or not described as user stories, let's say for the next 6, 9, 8 months. That is sort of a predicted product. That trying to predict anything that should be in the product, in our view, too long up front, makes us forget that there's probably going to emerge options, possibilities throughout the development process. So that, for me, is still important. That's sort of also shifting but emphasizing the role of the product on a bit more than just sort of a requirements engineer, let's say. And the next challenge I think is still valid is what I call the upstream adoption of Scrum. What are we doing as Scrum Masters to help people beyond the Scrum team, up the ladder, beside the ladder, whatever in the organization? What are we doing to help them understand Scrum and help them get more out of Scrum? Where Scrum is essentially that iterative incremental process based on empiricism. So what are we doing to help managers, leadership shift from that, again, predictive management style to more what I call exploratory management style? It's not in the definition of Scrum, but it's really important. And why is that important for me? Because introducing Scrum, adopting Scrum in organization can only be the really first step. You know, getting more benefits out of Scrum, getting more value out of Scrum, out of the adoption of Scrum, requires us to help organizations rethink all the structures around Scrum. Procedures, governance, meetings, how people are treated, HR processes, anything, PMO types of things. So Scrum is, let's say, the engine, sort of the new operating system upon which we want to run our organizations. But you know what? Getting all of the benefits out of Scrum is only going to happen if we rethink the structures around Scrum. And it's our role as a Scrum Master to challenge those structures, to challenge those procedures for their value, for how they add or not add value, how they undermine the focus of people, how they undermine self-organization, and so on. So, and that's why we need to address those challenges. So, and that brings me from the future state of Scrum, bring me to another way of stating that. Shaping the future of Scrum means finally start moving Scrum downfield. As you probably all know, we got the name of Scrum from the game of rugby, from that old paper, the new product development game, 1986. So play the game. And rather than being stuck in that Scrum, just trying to, we need to move downfield, start playing, try to score, try to achieve something, and leave that standstill. And for me, this requires 3 and potentially even 4 steps. First of all, we really have to reimagine our Scrum, or help our organizations rethink what Scrum is. And I'll come back on that. But beyond that, so introducing Scrum and now reimagining what Scrum actually is to get more benefits out of it, is, like I said, only the start. Beyond that, we have to think about how could we organize for value more, and how should we start managing for value. And meanwhile, so in my view, don't forget that aspect of humanizing your workplace. And if we all start humanizing our workplaces and reimagining our Scrums, we start reimagining Scrum and humanizing workplaces around the world. It's sort of a very bottom-up thing, and we all have a role to play in that. Now, to quickly go into that, let's start with sort of the essence again. So by the beginning of the Corona crisis, that's over 2 years ago, I was a little baffled by all the things that were happening. In Belgium, we had a lockdown, like I think most parts of the rest of the world, let's say. And I was a little bit baffled by, oh my God, what is happening? And I felt, let's take this sort of time off, sort of mandatory time off, to think about things again and look back. This was 2020. Scrum had been around since 1995. Agile Manifesto 2001. Scrum has been sort of overtaking the beautiful world of software development, and even other industries too. And I felt like this idea, it's time to start moving our Scrum and therefore Scrum as a whole downfield. I wrote a paper about it. It's the first paper. It's about sort of trying to help people look beyond the rules of Scrum, and that means the terminology and get over the fact that it's called a master. Well, it's a master of Scrum. It's not a master of people. Let's get over the fact that they call it an owner because it's an owner of the product. And so let's get over those types of discussion. And I started with my paper. That was a while before the latest update of the Scrum Guide, by the way. And I used the definition of Scrum that's on the screen, a simple framework that enables people to derive value from complex challenges. And I couldn't make it, my definition, even more simple, because I already feel it's sort of on the edge of being overly complicated, actually, because I wanted 4 aspects to be in my definition. First of all, the fact that the simplicity of Scrum, the simple set of rules, are essential. That simplicity is essential to tackle complex challenges. As we all know, software development is the complex challenge where Scrum took root and where it evolved from. In the meantime, it's being applied in a lot of other industries too. But it's about complexity. And tackling complexity with complexity is not going to work. It's going to make things worse. So we need that simplicity of Scrum. But also the fact it's about people. Scrum is a tool that enables people, that supports people. In what? Because people, human beings, no robots, not resources, not replaceable pieces of machinery. We are people, human beings. We've got a mood, we've got a sense of humor, we've got personal lives and so. So it's about enabling people. So it's Scrum should support people in doing a great job. So in that sense, Scrum is for me, as what I said also in my book, Scrum is more about behavior than it is about process. Because with Scrum, we create a framework literally within which people are going to interact, collaborate, work together, find out stuff together, explore, and so on. It's about people. But the purpose is to what we call to derive value. So it's not about volume. That's what I wrote in that paper. So value, that is a very different driver than volume is. Value is trying to do the right things that have an impact, that increase things like maybe customer satisfaction, that is an outcome of the work. And we should be focused on the outcome of the work, not just the output. We have to create output, but more on top of that, we want to look at the outcome of our output. Output in a way is volume. The idea of Scrum is not to do more and more quickly, because you could do a lot more with Scrum, but if you're driving in the wrong direction, not helpful. You're fooling yourself by thinking that you can do more. It's more about doing the right stuff. So that idea of value, I think, really important. I think about half a year later, the update of the Scrum Guide was there. I think my definition is still much in line with what Jeff and Ken wrote in the Scrum Guide. Yeah. Now, what is also in the Scrum Guide, is also in my paper, value, how to deliver value. You need a sort of vehicle to do that. And in a general sense, in Scrum, product is the vehicle to deliver value. Now, I've put product between little quotes. Why? Because product, you have to see that you can see that in a broad sense, and also not in a broad sense. But let me explain. In a broad sense, why? Because it can be a tangible thing, it can be a non-tangible thing, it can be a physical good, it can be a physical product, it can be a digital product, it can be a service. It's not in a broad sense. Why? Because there's a lot of things that people could identify or define as a product. And what I found in a lot of organizations is, if they even think about product, what they call a product is often a sort of sub-product. It's a module, a part, it's a part of the final product, and nobody's minding the overall product. That's why I've added, for me, product in Scrum only makes sense if it's a good, a service, tangible, non-tangible, digital, physical, whatever, but if it provides value to the end users, to the consumers, to the people consuming the product. Not to another team that have to continue the work that we have been doing on our sub-product and our component or whatever. And that's for me important. So it's about value, and product is the vehicle to deliver value. Now, what is so scary about that? In a lot of organizations, certainly larger organizations, when I go in, they've got lots of Scrum teams around. They've sort of moved everybody from being in an old school team or a specialized role, whatever. Everybody's now part of a team, but nobody's thinking about the product that they're working on. You've got all those micro teams handing over work to each other. And in the end, it looks like they work on the same product, but it's not sort of made explicit. They're not aware of it. So reimagining your Scrum means think about your product first. Identify what the product is for which you want to use Scrum, because Scrum is going to help you derive value from your product development. But if you have no idea what your product is, that's not really helpful. If needed, and if your product is really too big, slice it and identify some sort of autonomous part within the product that you can work on as a start. So, and if you've identified your product, then start with identifying what does it mean for us to create a done version of our product. What does done mean for this product? And that should be sort of at the start, not later on. And then reimagining your Scrum means reimagining your Scrum for that defined product or slice. Make your product backlog. Try to feel, taste, sense the what's in the name. Make it the product's backlog. Make it a backlog of a product, not a backlog of a team or a strange collection of requirements that come from all over the place. Make it, feel the term, make it the product backlog. So know your product, and I make sure that you've got for your product a backlog that holds all the work that a product owner thinks is going to bring value for that product. So make your product backlog not just the product's backlog, but it's also the single source of work and progress. And then rethink or think again about those Scrum accountabilities. Again, what's in the name? Product owner. do you have an owner of the product? That means, do you have a product in the first place? You have a backlog for your product, and you have a person that has the accountability of owning the product. Okay? And I think about team composition. Are your teams optimally formed so that they can optimally serve that identified product or that identified product slice? So think about it. And that is for me really, really important. And then please facilitate those teams, those Scrum teams, those people doing development, facilitating, help them, make sure that they can work in a context, that they have tools, access to systems, that they have autonomy, that they can make decisions, that they can organize their work in sprints, that they're not distracted all the time, dragged to external meetings, and things are not valuable for their work anyhow. So facilitate them so that they can finally start delivering. That's old term from Scrum. I don't know how long you guys been in Scrum. So it's got tasty sashimi releases of your product regularly, a lot. So adopting Scrum, I'm afraid that a lot of organizations have to rethink their Scrum, reimagine their Scrum first by knowing what is the product that we have, and then organizing the Scrum in a way that they can optimally serve their product, in the sense of trying to bring value to the consumers of the product. But it doesn't stop there. Remember, value. Purpose is value, not volume, not just doing blindly more, but doing the right stuff, the things that take you in the right direction, that have the best possible impact, that annoy your competitors, that delight your consumers, that bring a lot of money to the company, in a way of working that also excites the teams that are involved in the work, so humanizing the workplace. And it requires, again, simplicity, 3 things. You can arm for value. What does it mean, arm? Anticipate, assume value by ordering the product backlog for value. Importance, what is most important? Reorder all the time, rethink every sprint again. What is the most important work that we have to do now in order to hopefully achieve or deliver or bring the most value? So do something with value on your product backlog. Value might be in the ordering of your product backlog. You might create an attribute for product backlog items, where product backlog items no longer are estimated only in effort, in an amount of work, or in the cost involved, but also estimated for assumed value, so that a product owner can make a balance between effort and value. And value is absolutely missing in a lot of product backlogs when I go out there and work with teams. So, but putting value, assuming value on your product backlog items, that's only a first step. It's literally an assumption of value. You can't really know unless you actually release the increments, which is the output of your work, release the increment, put it out in the market, put it into the hands of the consumers. And even that is not enough, because putting it into the hands of consumers is not enough, in the sense that you need feedback. In that sense, you want to measure, you want to capture feedback from the actual usage of the product or the product version of the increment in the market by the consumer base. You want to measure that. So anticipate or assume value. By the way, luckily they're both starting with an A, so I don't have to ruin my little abbreviation there, let's say. So anticipate value on your product backlog. Via an attribute, via the clearly ordering your product backlog for importance and value, release, but also don't forget to measure. And that is in a way exploratory management of value. Sprint after sprint, increment after increment, measuring the outcome. Because measuring what you do is the outcome, the impact that you have with your increment on the market, in terms of user satisfaction, user happiness, market share, revenues coming back to the company, annoying customers, customer retention might be attracting new customers. That is impact, that is the outcome of the work. And that's important. But in that sense, important exploratory management rather than predictive management. In exploratory management, such measurements, that is you'll probably recognize it in a lot of companies. They like to call them KPIs. And KPIs, the word says key performance indicators. It's an indication of a situation. But unfortunately, in most organizations, they are not used as indicators, but they are targets. They are set as targets. Don't forget that. In an exploratory management style, where it's all about complexity, uncertainty, and not being able to predict how the world would look like next month, in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, and next year. It's not about such targets. You want to use measurements to have a real, honest indication of the situation, whether that's good or bad. So it's not about appreciation. A measurement can tell you, oh my God, we hoped that we would increase customer satisfaction. We hope that we would increase our revenue, and it's not happening. Then by all means, you really want to know that it is not happening, and not fool yourself by pretending as if it's happening, although, like, everybody knows it's not happening. So don't treat them as targets. And in an evolving world, think more in terms of trends than in terms of singular data points. So capturing a measurement once is not good enough. You want to keep doing that. And in that sense, in a way, you're adding a sort of feedback loop on top of your Scrum zone. So you've rebooted your Scrum zone, you've reimagined your Scrum, you now know what the product is, you've got clear accountabilities in place, you've got a real owner of the product, a real backlog of the product, and then teams delivering sashimi releases of the product. You want to release and measure. And what you want to release is outcome, impact, in that sense, value. That might require you to think about, what do we mean with value? What is value for us? At some point in time, value might just be learning, might just be market share. At probably a later point of time in the product, it's going to be about real revenues or profits and financial benefits. So think about what is value for us. That's also an invitation by presenting this. Yeah, and then facilitate the Scrum zone, like I said before. Facilitate them, try to help them improve their ability to deliver value by helping them think about the skills and knowledge they have, the practices that they use, the tools that they have, the access to systems that they have, the standards they apply, and so on. So it's about adding a feedback loop on top of your Scrum. Scrum simplicity, organizing your work in sprints, and adding a feedback loop on top of that, because as you know, a sprint already has sort of two feedback loops: a sprint itself and the little feedback loop that we call a daily Scrum. Yeah? And that is important. And what is so important about those trends, and that's also why it's an additional feedback loop, it's about feedback loop. You want to close that feedback loop regularly. So that means anticipate, assume value on your product backlog, release regularly, measure the outcome, the impact. Honestly, that relates a lot to the transparency that we need for empiricism. You want full transparency over your measurements, but do that again and again and again. It might be, even if you're really very sophisticated in doing Scrum, you might have released within a sprint, so that in a way you could also talk about outcome and impact already at the sprint review. And then it's sort of connected or tied into that cycle that we call a sprint. So think about reimagining your Scrum, know your product, define what means done for our product, but also define what means value, so that you can focus on that, you can work towards that, so that you can optimize for value. And value means doing the right stuff at the right time. That is not about being busy. It's not about filling your hours. It's about doing the right stuff at the right time. It's not about volume either. It's not about that sort of old school thinking of utilization, which is sort of being busy. Yeah? Sometimes we keep people busy by asking to do stuff that is really not important at this time, but hey, who cares? They have to be busy because we're paying them for that. Maybe not really the atmosphere or the spirit of Scrum, let's say. So managing for value, reimagine your Scrum, and now how to look at that from sort of the management perspective, what I call managing for value. Now, the definition of Scrum, we all know Scrum comes from that old paper. Now, in that old paper, the new product development came, 1986. Like in the Scrum guide, in that paper also, they don't say what management should look like. They don't say how an organization should be organized. But already in that paper, they said explicitly, maybe you should add something to that in like that in the Scrum Guide, I don't know. But they said explicitly, you know what, in order to get really benefits out of this process that they called Scrum with those 6 characteristics, self-organization, building instability, and the things that they highlighted over there. So they already said organizations need to adopt a management style that promotes this process. That means they've already told us that you cannot successfully adopt Scrum without rethinking how management works, how leadership works, how procedures are set up, how governance works, and so on. Now, I've got some exciting news, let's say. So this is the result of a survey that was done by the Boston Consulting Group a few years ago. They had been checking in with managers about sort of their happiness or their satisfaction at work. And the results were quite, let's just say, quite depressing, actually. Now, we all think we are Scrum Masters, we work with teams, we are involved with people on the work floor all the time. We think that we are the only ones really unhappy. So the good news is that is not true. Managers are also not happy too. Now, doing something about it is probably even more important. So in that, what turned out in that survey, that managers that were part of the survey, that only 37% of them said that they wanted to remain a manager, let's say the midterm, somewhat longer term. That means, you know what, I can't keep doing this for the rest of my life, which is sort of, in a way, sad. And so that is for people in a management role. Now, people actually being managed, let's say managed employees, only 9% of them really aspire to become a manager themselves over the midterm or the somewhat longer term. So it doesn't seem to be a very attractive thing, not even for the people that are already doing it. And what is the biggest dissatisfaction that came out of that survey? You know what? No matter where I am on the ladder of the organization, unless maybe on the executive level, let's say, no matter where I am, I'm only expected to implement decisions, to enforce decisions that are also imposed upon me. I've got no autonomy, let's say. I've got no freedom to make decisions. I have to implement decisions that come from one level up and that are then imposed upon me. And if you think about humanizing the workplace, by the way, there's also, remember, intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. A lot of those managers or people currently in a management or leadership position say, you know what, I had to do this, and it's the only thing that I could do, what I can do in order to make some progress, earn a little bit more money, grow within the company. So that's not, as we know, a humanized workplace would thrive on intrinsic motivation, money, status, a bigger company car, I don't know what. Extrinsic motivation, at some point of time, they will become toxic if you don't add a sort of intrinsic layer to that. So really not good. Now, people really not happy. On the other hand, there was also some good news in the survey. The same people currently in a management position, they were also asked now if the way that you have to perform your role, fulfill your role currently, is not what you would like to keep doing in the future, it's not what you think it should be, what should management then be about in your view? And those people said, and rather than having one element like the dissatisfaction that really jumps out, they said, well, you know what, the 5 things that I believe management ideally should be about helping team members develop themselves professionally, develop their skills, grow skills, and give them feedback that helps them develop as professionals. Eliminate obstacles that are hindering them, that are blocking them, that are preventing them from moving forward. Facilitate them. Facilitate in the sense of eliminating obstacles for them, helping them eliminate obstacles for themselves. And rather than telling people what to do, set goals. Provide some view into the future. Where do we want to go to? What are we hoping to achieve somewhere in the future? Rather than detailed predictive plans. And rather than implement decisions, make decisions. We believe that management should be involved in making decisions and not just implement decisions that are imposed upon them. And then create meaning. Think about purpose, goals, purpose, meaning, and from purpose, goals, meaning, facilitating, and so on, motivate teams. Create an environment where people love to come to work again. And I don't know how familiar that sounds to you guys, but it sounded enormously familiar to me, because that is a sad thing. This is about Scrum. With Scrum, we have an answer on this. We can help people, not just teams, but also management. We can help them shape a better future for their organizations, and go over that sort of outgrow that deeply ingrained unhappiness that lives in organizations throughout all layers. And that means it's about another old sentence that we like to use a long time ago, Scrum, moving authority down the line. Rather than having all those layers imposing decisions upon the layer under them, let's help organizations move authority down the line, increase the simplicity of their organization. In that sense, it starts with those 3 accountabilities we have in Scrum. Remember that paper, Moving Your Scrum Downfield? It's from before the latest update of the Scrum Guide. And by then I took the liberty to keep product owner in place as a term and Scrum Master in place. And then looking back at the sports analogy, Scrum Rugby, where we got the name from, I said, let's call the people that are doing the work, it used to be called the development team, let's call them the Scrum team. It's now called developers, by the way, in the Scrum Guide. And I've called it team of developers. Yeah? So we've got a product owner, and they all do a part of management. So it's not like in Scrum, management is not a dirty word, but maybe exerting power is not really what we want, facilitating, helping, coaching, and so on. So we've got a product owner managing the product, managing the what of the product. What are we going to do? What is most important? We've got a Scrum team or developers or team of developers managing their own work within the sprint. Managing how are we doing this work? How are we getting the implementation done? What sort of work do we need to do for that? What practices do we apply, all against that definition of done, following the priorities as we agreed with the product owner for this sprint? So in that sense, bringing the what and how together across product owner and Scrum team or developers. So we've got people doing management. So we've got a role, accountability, managing the what. We've got an accountability managing the how. And we've got a sort of game master, or the Scrum Master for that, facilitating the game, helping people get more out of the game, or like I said, challenging the status quo. In that sense, managing the environment, making sure that an environment emerges where people love to come to work and where people enact Scrum more and more and more. And as those 3 accountabilities get to know each other better and think about reimagining your Scrum, they are now working towards a clearly or on a clearly defined product with a clearly defined product backlog, with the idea of trying to generate assumed value at least sprint after sprint after sprint. They've potentially reorganized team composition for that. As they start to get to know each other better and better and better, they also grow better relationships with the people beyond the Scrum team. Yeah? And 2 very important parties that they get to work with is what I would call stakeholders. Stakeholders, what I like to see as people within the organization, having really a stake in the product, not just in the work, not in the tasks, the activities that the team does, but in the product, in the result. And what do they do in a context, in the world of Scrum stakeholders? They provide feedback input to the product owner, to the developers, to the Scrum team, with regards to potentially strategic direction of the company, information about the competition, what other organizations are doing. They provide feedback and input rather than imposing decisions on the team or on the product owner or whatever. They help the team figure out what is important, or what are important changes out there in the world within the organization that are important for you guys to know. Yeah? And then often overlooked, field consumers. Sometimes you could say consumers, specific type of stakeholders. I like to see them as separate because they're way too important. They're not just stakeholders, they are the consumers. They use the product, they use the features, they try to They have to come up with workarounds. They have to struggle with the manuals or the whatever work instructions that we give them. Yeah? Again, they provide feedback, they provide input, not about strategic direction, but about the usage of the product. Oh my God, yeah, I understand why you build it like this, but I would prefer it to be like this. Very important feedback for future evolutions of the product. So, and this is moving authority down the line. So we've got a sort of autonomous Scrum team having great, fruitful relationships with both stakeholders and consumers. That is challenging the status quo in the sense of challenging the current setup of a lot of organizations in order to help them get more out of Scrum, more value. So by focusing on value of the product, getting more value out of the adoption of Scrum. So in that sense, sort of a future organization form for me is what I call product hubs. So by implementing this, focusing on the product, defining the product, and then setting up teams to better manage the product or deliver the product. But at the heart of all of this is a product, delivering end-to-end features to end user or consumer. The product has an owner. So the product owner is at the heart of the product hub. In that sense, I think a long time ago we called it the mini CEO. I think I would call the product owner the product CEO. It's just sort of a synonym to product owner, right? The owner of the product. So the product owner is at the heart of the product hub, not owning the company, but owning the product. And for a product, there's a lot of things that need to happen. You've got sales aspects, financial things that need to happen, marketing, branding, communication. Have to think about strategy. You have to think about market analysis, competitive analysis, new ideas, and so on. Product also has to be delivered. So the minimal purpose of Scrum, and that's often a good way to start, is to organize your product delivery with Scrum. By those, what I've called Scrum teams, what is now called developers in the new Scrum Guide, what we used to call development teams. So we've got a product owner, we've got delivery of the product versions via increments, and then all those other aspects. In all those other aspects, let's call them in general product management, the product owner is at least highly involved. In that sense, the product owner is not going to do all of that work, sales, marketing, branding, but is probably going to have to be involved in some way. In that sense, that the product owner becomes a bridge between the delivery of the product by the Scrum teams and product management. In that sense, trying to bring information from product management into the Scrum teams via the product backlog probably also, but also bring information from the actual progress of delivery of development and feed that back to the organization within the product hub to sales, marketing people, and so on. So connecting those worlds. You could use Scrum to also organize all those other processes. For me, that's not even a must. Use Scrum where it's really beneficial. I'm not saying that you have to use sprints to organize marketing. I'm not saying you have to use sprints to organize your sales processes. Might not be useful. But for the delivery of a product in a highly complex, uncertain world, please do. And then within the organization, you can have stakeholders. You can have subject matter experts. You can use them for feedback, input, certain types of information that are useful, but it doesn't change the fact that basically the product versions via increments are being created, delivered by Scrum team, having product owner, having Scrum teams or development teams or teams of developers. And that whole thing is facilitated by what we call that product, by that Scrum Master. Sort of a game master, bring those people together. In a bigger product hub, you might have several Scrum Masters. Depends a little bit on how many teams of developers that you have in place and how much facilitation they need and coaching and support and guidance and so on. But at least there's a Scrum Master or several Scrum Masters to facilitate this whole product hub. Also emphasizing thereby the fact that as Scrum Masters, we are not just servant leaders for within the Scrum team. We are also servant leaders for the organization. It's our goal to also help the organization understand Scrum, get more out of Scrum, rethink their role, reimagine their Scrum, but also reimagine the organization around Scrum. And that's much more important than dictating that Scrum Guide says this sort of terminology and so on. I think we can expect Scrum Masters to be sort of ingrained with Scrum, and that sort of, they should be able to almost transcend the specific terminology and go to the spirit of Scrum, the underlying DNA, and so on. Yeah? And in that sense, if you think back about the new product development kit, where they said you have to adopt a management style that supports this process, and that what they called Scrum, with those 6 characteristics, by the way, very focused on self-organization. So later on, certainly Ken but also with Jeff, they added empiricism to that. So the regular process of inspection adaptation. So self-organization, empiricism, that is Scrum. But in that paper, they already said, you know what, the idea of such a team or a construction of a team developing a product is that, and I've called that a product hub, is that they operate like a startup. They set their own agenda, they define their own agenda, they define their own work, they take their own initiatives. And the role of management and leadership, everybody around that, in my case, product or part or around the Scrum team, they act more like an investor. They do not intervene on a daily basis. They do not intervene in the tasks and the activities and so on, but they provide guidance, they provide money, funding, and moral support at the outset. For me, that might be at the review, coming to the review, checking in, what do you need more, where do you need support? That is that facilitation that I talked about. Yeah. So and that is that management style. So moving authority down the line. And in that sense, leadership becomes a quality of a lot of people and a lot of accountabilities, and not just some hyper assertive individual shouting the loudest and being the harshest and the most annoying or irritating, you know, that seagull type of manager coming in, shitting all over the place and flying back out. Not really helpful. In that sense, there's a lot of management happening in Scrum. So it's not just management managing in Scrum. The Scrum teams or development teams or teams of developers, they manage product owner, manage in a way the Scrum Master manages too, in a way that's acting as a manager, but you're just not trying to control people. You're trying to create an environment in which people can rise and find their intrinsic motivation again. And that is for me so important. Why is that? Because what I see with a lot of organizations, they've got this old, you know, pyramid structure in place, layers and so on. And used to have like a lot of individuals, let's say on the work floor, spread all over the place and running around like what I like to call headless chickens often, not really connected to each other, not really have shared objectives and so on. And it seems that a lot of organizations think, you know what, if we combine those individuals all into teams, now we're going to towards let's say some sort of paradise. That is not happening. If you think that more agile teams is enough to create a more agile organization, think again. It's not going to happen. You have to rethink the structures around Scrum. Because in the end, overall, those structures are still rigid. They are fixed, they are difficult to change. You now just have micro teams running around like headless chickens rather than individuals. It's not going to help. What you want to do is to and that it is for me moving Scrum forward. Think about the product, define the product, organize your Scrum that you ultimately serve your product with a product owner, teams of developers or Scrum teams and Scrum Masters, potentially going towards a product hub so that you over time, step by step by step, product by product by product, that you change the overall structure of the organization from the rigid pyramid structure into a flexible, what for me an agile structure is, of a combination, a networked structure of product hubs, where a product hub can grow, it can shrink, it can disappear, a new product hub can start up if a new product is more useful. And again, leadership is a distributed quality. And what holds those things together, what defines sort of the network structure, is purpose of the organization. What are we trying to achieve? Why are we doing this? Why do we even exist as an organization? Will you still have what we now call management and leadership? Obviously, but again, it's more like a facilitating role towards those product hubs, sort of the glue that keeps them all together. And that is what I'm missing. That is why I'm sort of my call to action. Let's start moving Scrum downfield. Let's stop discussing the rules of the game. Let's start applying the games. Let's, as Scrum Masters, help people see the beauty of the rules and how to get more out of them by updating the structures or rethink the structures around Scrum. And I think towards a networked structure of product hubs, which in a way is also a scalable structure, as I described. Sort of my message. And so in that sense, it's also a sort of a call for help. I started by referring to my little book, my Scrum Pocket Guide. And I've got this chapter, The Future State of Scrum. And by the end of that chapter, I have this quote. And I said, and I still truly believe that. But it needs us stepping up. Because I said the future state of Scrum will no longer be called Scrum. Because what we now call Scrum will have become the norm, the standard way of working. And that is happening. Scrum is all over the place. Yeah? We can help people get more out of Scrum by reimagining the Scrum. We can help people get even more out of that by helping organizations remerge their structures or remerge as a whole around Scrum. By rethinking procedures, governance, PMOs, types of things that are not really helpful, by helping people see how management in Scrum works, but it's not purely hierarchical, but it's a distributed, let's say, activity. So I'm keeping this in my book. I truly believe we are moving towards that, not as fast as I think we should or we could, but I still think we can do that. But I think we need to kick some asses to really start doing this. So Scrum Masters, please pick up that thing, challenging the status quo. Kick some asses within your organization. The only limit to that is without getting fired, because that's not helpful either. So please keep learning, keep that openness, keep that eagerness to learn, to improve. Transfer that eagerness that you have on other people. Help them to do more too. That's what I wanted to talk about. So what I call the future state of Scrum, I'm rephrasing that a little bit, moving your Scrum downfield. Start playing, move upon the field, move towards the goal, get out of that Scrum situation where you have the two teams facing each other. Start to play, stop the debates, ignore the ranters, ignore the bashers. They've already lost anyhow. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very much. You're welcome. Hope you liked it.
Thank you.
And I
Loved
hope
it.
Give you some energy again to go out there, get some things done.
Go kick some ass.
It's very relatable.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I feel this is sort of the current status quo. So we've got now all these agile teams around, and we call them agile teams. We can't even call them Scrum teams, where Scrum is more tangible, it's actionable. Scrum will help you become more agile. And I feel we're stuck in this status quo. And I think challenging the status quo by trying to move Scrum as a whole, by all of our efforts, trying to move Scrum forward.
So I have a question, please, and thanks for the content. It's really, really helpful to me. I have dealt actually with many managers and organizations during my career, and I was really hoping to see this kind of managers, in software that dealing with the mindset we are talking about here. But somehow I didn't find that at all so far. And while talking also about managers, now managers are, could be old people, age or so. So it could be very, very hard to convince someone with, with a different approach or a different thing, which is making, changing the way is very challenging to some extent. That could be impossible. Unfortunately, this is my experience, so.
I agree, and it's my experience too. And I've got a couple of things I would like to share. First of all, I personally, I don't see a relationship actually between age and agility. I've seen like old people become really agile and really find, oh yeah, my God, this is what we used to do like 30 years ago. Let's go back to it. Oh, that was great, that way of working. I've seen young people totally into bureaucracy and so on. So for me, there's not really a tight relationship between age and agility, let's say, but I agree with your finding. And the difficulty I think that we're facing as Scrum people is the following. So the Scrum Guide doesn't describe how an organization should look like. And I think that is good. It shouldn't, because there are so many organizations, there are no blueprint, cookbook, whatever models that we can say, this is how you should organize. So it is a sort of a venture, a journey of discovering that for yourself. Now, then we face this often, I don't know, things like status, job security, and so on. And it seems that often people climb the ladder within an organization and then they start taking themselves like really seriously. Oh, I now have to be rational. I have to be cold all the time. That means they often think that I'm climbing the ladder. I have to leave my personal, my human side behind me. Although often when I talk to them, they're like real great people. They care about the well-being of their people too. But for some reason, they don't get to express that in their work. So let's treat those people as human beings too. And maybe along the line, help them think about what is management about? The well-being of people, the well-being of the company, how to best achieve that. So it's going to be a slow path, I agree, but I think we should do more work on it. Otherwise, and that's sort of my message of challenge and status quo. But I do, unfortunately, totally relate to your observations. It's not an easy thing. But it doesn't mean we should stop doing it.
Yeah, thank you for the reply. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's often helped me, by the way, in talking to managers, often even CXO, things with works and so on. Almost, it sounds strange, but sort of approach them as equals. It sounds strange because if you go up to them and sort of looking up, like you're already putting them sort of on a pedestal, don't do that, because unconsciously it already confirms to them, I should be the boss. In that sense, treat them as humans, as people too, treat them as equals. So approach them as equals. That sense, give them all the respect. And believe me, most of them really care about the well-being of people, but they've lost the ability or the possibility to express that. So let's help them find that part of themselves again. That's, by the way, also sort of an attitude problem I often see when people go in for Scrum. A lot of managers, certainly middle managers, they think, oh my God, we're going to do Scrum. And Scrum has this sort of image around the world, this idea that, oh, that means eliminating management. So when I go to work with an organization, I always do it from the stance, I'm not here to eliminate your job. I'm here to help you find a better way to do your job and potentially do that again. So think about that survey from the Boston Consulting Group, where managers said, ideally management should be about this. Well, a lot of managers, for me, certainly middle managers, would be great either Scrum Masters or product owners. The reason that they are not doing it is because of status, money, career, and so on. So let's try to create a situation where they can do something that they really want to do without having the feeling of being demoted.
I really liked your terminology of an exploratory management. It's that mindset shift from management perceived to be the people who know everything already versus we're always wanting to learn more because the world keeps changing and we have to keep adjusting. And how do we learn how to help our people more to work better in the Scrum, right? Yeah. So it's a great, I really like that terminology.
Thank you, Russ, very much. But it's also, again, sort of in a way tied into that observation again. I would hope that term in a way also inspires those people. Oh yeah, I don't have to, that's something we've been hoping with Scrum for. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. It's something that we hoped that manager would see as a relief, all that weight from their shoulders. But unfortunately, that seems to be a little bit naive. But I like naivety. From naivety, we can change the world. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm not really having looking on the clock. I am, but I don't know. I think
we have about
go
15
ahead.
minutes left. Are there any more questions?
Not so much a question, just a comment. I found that typically it's coming and discussing with people in their language as well. Sometimes some of the resistance you get is because they're not familiar with kind of either some of the language or some of the concepts. It's not necessarily that they're opposed to the change. It's that they just don't quite understand it, how they fit in, where they fit in, that kind of thing. So sometimes it's more about changing how you approach them and having that agility to understand where their mindset is at and then adjusting so that you can have that conversation on a level that everybody understands what's going on.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think in sort of traditional coaching terms, it's called meeting them where they are. Also, is it so the expression? Yeah, and in that sense, I've had some eye openers in workshops with people that they see, oh, so Scrum is not about giving up control. It's not about total risk, but they get to see how to mitigate risks in Scrum differently. Not by breathing down people's neck all day long, but checking in every 2 or 3 weeks with the team. What is happening? What have you done? How can I help you? And so on. So in that sense, it's tied into what you just said. So in that sense, it's okay to talk about control or risk, but explain how you get control, how you mitigate or manage risks in an environment of Scrum. Yeah. Right. If you have more questions, by the way, I believe you can just speak up. And looking at, by the way, the chat, somebody says management needs to be in on these talks. Yeah, that's true. But if I translate that also to sort of the inside of an organization, what I see is a huge challenge for a lot of Scrum Masters. It's about Scrum Masters. Same for product owners, by the way, but also for Scrum Masters to get recognized as somebody familiar, a master of Scrum. Somebody that if anybody has a question with regards to Scrum, we have a person for that, or we have several persons for that. Go talk to them. So a lot of Scrum Masters are having difficulties getting recognized, let's say higher up in the organization, as the one who knows about Scrum. And that's also something, sort of like my quote is in the back there of my room. So life is about creating it yourself. So the challenge is to not sit around as a Scrum Master waiting for the moment that you will be recognized as somebody with mastery in Scrum. Do something about it. Try to get yourself recognized. Try to get sort of that foot in the door, almost of the management team sometimes.
That's really great advice.
I asked the question, I was asking how you manage risk in Scrum.
Yeah. Well, risk in Scrum is for me managed in the fact that we organize work in short cycles that we call sprints. That's one thing. So it's not 6 months of work where that 6 months is a huge black box. So it's only 2 or 3 weeks of work, max 4 weeks. That's one aspect. And the second aspect is, and that is very important, we deliver a done piece of work no later than by the end of the sprint. That means that piece of work is done in the sense there's no open remaining work that we have no idea who's going to do it by when and how much time is it going to take, because that ruins our idea of progress. And that's in line with what the Agile Manifesto says. The primary measure of progress is working software, or in our world of Scrum, working increments of your product. And that requires thinking in terms of the product, defining done, and then organizing your Scrum with the practices and the capabilities and the people and the skills and the expertise to be able to actually deliver those sashimi releases of your product. A done increment that has no open, unknown work in it. That is how you mitigate risk in Scrum. Essentially beyond all of the other things. Does that help?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Gunther. Thank you.
And that is again tied into that observation of managers. Risk mitigation in Scrum is not compliance with the upfront predicted plan. That is fake, because probably people are probably lying anyhow. No, it's actually observing a working piece of product by the end of 2 or 3 weeks of work, so that you can judge it, assess it, and that even more, it's about feedback, giving feedback on what you appreciate, not appreciate, what you would like to do differently. And that is for me also the essence of agility. And thanks to somebody in the chat window saying you should definitely read Gunther's book. I can only agree with that.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So if the management is pushing for the predictability from the Scrum teams, and the Scrum teams want autonomy and freedom, and they don't want to look at the metrics kind of offend them, how do you bridge the gap of supporting as a Scrum Master or an Agile coach to enable the teams and then also kind of get a buy-in from the management?
Yeah, so and you've used the perfect expression, it's bridging that gap, meaning it's not the one, it's not the other. An autonomous team is brilliant, but it's not, the autonomy shouldn't lead to a situation where they think they should not tie into company strategies and company direction. So it's indeed about bridging that gap. So a team using autonomy to do whatever they want, that's sort of disconnecting themselves from the wider organization, not helpful. And the same in the other direction. As a Scrum Master, get recognized as somebody who knows, who can explain, help people grow, develop better relationships, making sure the product owner invites the right stakeholders to the review. At the start of the sprint review, remind everybody of what the event is about collecting feedback based upon the discussions over the increment, the work that has been done and so on, that it's not about assessing tasks and estimates that were done or not done within the sprint. It's about, so trying to get people to actually collaborate. So sort of set an atmosphere, at least for the sprint review, because that is where people, let's say, formally get together. Set an atmosphere for the sprint review so that people know what the sprint review is about. And then have lots of conversations with people outside of the sprint review. Ask questions, challenge them. Ask questions to, I don't know, the Scrum team. Yeah, but how do you think this would feel as a stakeholder? You behaving like this. The other way around too, talk to stakeholders or managers. How do you think this feels with those people? You've hired them for their professionalism, for their skills, and now do you think you can do development better than they can do? So there's plenty of questions you can ask in an open way. They can be quite provocative questions, but if, in my view, I'm from Belgium. If you ask them gently and politely, sort of they lead, let's say, to less irritation. So ask questions, get people to talk. Be sure that you're not sort of the one conveying the message from party A to party B and running around all the time. Get people to talk to together, coach that, facilitate that conversation. It's a long process, step after step after step, sprint after sprint after sprint.
Thank you, Gunther. That's helpful.
Hi, Gunther. I have a question.
Mhm.
So since we are talking a lot about observing the environment, the teams, and also the system, do you have some suggestions like on how to make good observations as a Scrum Master and without the assumptions?
In a way, I think sort of indirectly. Let me sort of bring your question to another thing that I see a lot. Also, again, that sort of debates out there, social media and so on. How much teams can a Scrum Master handle? And then people say, yo, no more than 2, no more than 3. And I'm like, who knows? By the way, yeah, this is sort of a flip chart about what I call multi-team Scrum. You don't know. You've got a number of teams building a product, and then you will need at least 1 Scrum Master to facilitate the ecosystem, let's say. You might need more Scrum Masters depending on the needs of the teams. In that sense, why I am sort of in favor of making that sort of in the moment decision is it's not about business. It's not about utilization. The reason why I see some organizations goes towards 1 Scrum Master that has to manage or handle or facilitate whatever multiple teams because it's about utilization. Scrum is not about utilization because of what you just asked me. If imagine Scrum Master, you have to sort of work with 3 teams at the same time. That means you run around from team 1 to team 2 to team 3 and so on. That means as you're working with team 2, something really important might be happening with team 1 that you haven't noticed, that you have no idea. Yeah? So try to work with not too many teams at the same time because it will avoid you from doing observations that might be really important. If you have no idea about what happened throughout the sprint, how are you going to make sure that those topics surface at the sprint retrospective, which is a very important event for a Scrum Master? If you have no idea what happened, so and there's another book that I've helped write, edited a few years ago. It's called 97 Things Every Scrum Practitioner Should Know. And one of the 2 guys from Les, Bas Vodder, he wrote a beautiful article and we were working on it together and we came up with a title that said, actively doing nothing is actually hard work. So that means part of a Scrum Master's role is actually to observe, sit back, not intervene, but still be connected to the events that are happening, all of the things that are happening, absorb them, digest them, keep them in mind somewhere, keep a little note of them, things that you want to potentially talk about at least at the retrospective. As long as things don't get out of hand too much, you want to keep them for the retrospective. But if you're not available with the team, even when you really don't have to really do something, you don't know what's happening. That's sort of the utilization trap.
Thank you so
being
much.
present, and what I've called at some point in time, you know, people often abuse this thing of self-organization and autonomy to say, yeah, that means that the Scrum Master must become obsolete at some point of time, which is a silly interpretation. Self-organization happens within boundaries. One of the boundaries is the rules of Scrum, the way of organizing, and one of sort of the people guarding the boundaries is the Scrum Master. Yeah? So what I described as the ultimate purpose of a Scrum Master is to become invisibly present. You're still there, but maybe people don't even notice you. And still, what in my experience is very important, just the fact that you're there often is very comforting to people. So try to become invisibly present. That was all the most beautiful moments as a Scrum Master, I believe.
Yeah, I got your points. Thank you so much. And maybe one more point, since we are all working in a hybrid environment now, like most of us working remotely, and then it became even more challenging to observe the environment because we are not there 100% with them. So any tips about that part?
Yeah, how to call that? Multimedia communication channels. Try to get the team think about how to simulate rather than working on site together all the time, try to create a sort of simulation of that situation anyhow, using media, modern media. In a hybrid situation, complexity is even a little bit higher than working face-to-face in a room together. That means you need more empiricism, more regular inspection, adaptation, potentially. Probably more than just the daily Scrum.
All right, thank you.
Think about that.
Yeah, nice reflection point. Thanks a lot.
I had a quick question. Sorry. Just wanted to know, I have heard different perspective from different people who should be participant of retrospective. So whom do we think? In my understanding experience, mostly the Scrum team, but everywhere I go and I've worked with different organizations, different teams, Scrum team, does it really include the product owner, product manager, or it's just the development team that is the Scrum team that are there in the retrospective? So thoughts?
Yeah. Let me give you a very clear and then afterwards a much more unclear answer. The clear answer is indeed the Scrum team, meaning the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers.
Okay.
That is the minimal requirement.
Okay.
Because they are the ones doing the work. They are working together. They are accountable for those increments, those valuables, those increments. They have to figure out how to work together. It's more like looking at what I call that engine of the car. They have to tune the engine so that they can work better together. That is the minimal thing. You can stay with that. And that is indeed like somebody says in the chat, according to Scrum, you've got the Scrum Guide, it's a Scrum team, product owner, developers, and the Scrum Master. The retrospective is for the Scrum team. The more unclear answer is that, for me, that is sort of the minimal definition. So for me, the Scrum Guide defines who has to be there, who must be there. The developers, product owner, and the Scrum Master. If you're working in an organization that is really starting to get Scrum, that embraces transparency, then in a way the Scrum team might allow other people to be at the retrospective too. Why not? That could even also happen for the daily Scrum, but only if it doesn't change the atmosphere, the spirit of the event. If it doesn't reduce the honesty, if it doesn't take away the ability, the courage of people to speak up honestly. So you want to keep transparency totally at the max level. If it then works to have also other people at any of the events, why not? But start with Scrum team and grow from there.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
That's the end of this, and we're a little late for our break. Thank you, Gunther. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. And
thank you all for being here. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just thanking people. I can thank people all evening long, by the way.
Yes, Gunther's wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to take a brief 15-minute break, and we'll be back for a panel discussion.
Okay, cool. Bye-bye, everybody.